Escape Pod, Episode 637. At the Village Vanguard, Ruminations on Blacktopia. By Maurice Broadus.
Hello, and welcome to Escape Pod. I'm Merle Lafferty, this week's host and co-editor. There are 11 days left to vote for the Hugo Awards. If you're eligible, have you voted? Today's story is At the Village Vanguard, Ruminations on Blacktopia by Maurice Broadus. A community organizer and teacher, Maurice's work has appeared in Lightspeed, Weird Tales, Apex, Asimov, Cemetery Dance, Black Static, and many more. Some of his stories have been collected in The Voice of Martyrs. He wrote the urban fantasy trilogy, The Knights of Breton Court. He co-authored the play Finding Home, Indiana at 200. His novellas include Buffalo Soldier, I Can Transform You, Bleed With Me, and Devil's Marionette. He's the co-editor of Dark Faith, Streets of Shadows, and People of Color Destroy Horror. Learn more about him at mauricebroadus.com. It's read to you by Stephanie Morris. She works in a bookstore by day and in a library by night, which gives her access to more books than she can possibly read over several lifetimes. She's a recipient of the Octavia E. Butler Memorial Scholarship Award and a graduate of the 2017 Clarion West Writers' Workshop. Her short fiction has appeared or is forthcoming in Faya, Apex, and Nightmare. She has narrated short fiction for Starship Sofa, Far-Fetched, Fables, Uncanny, and all 4 of the Escape Artists podcast. This story originally appeared in the Escape Artists e-zine, Mothership Zeta. Buckle up your seatbelt and don't look back. We're moving forward into story time.
At the Village Vanguard, Ruminations on Blacktopia by Maurice Broadus. In this, the 25th anniversary of the founding of the lunar colony, First World, colloquially called Blacktopia by its residents, the Indianapolis Recorder, the nation's oldest surviving African-American newspaper, continues its series revisiting key events. The reporter interviewed and re-interviewed many of the principals in order to piece together a picture of the terrorist threat that nearly ended it and the heroic actions of science police officer Astra Black. Jiminy Kreutz, a.k.a. J. Crew, Science Police, Senior Investigator, retired. When the alarm sounded for the converter station, I had no doubt she would beat me there. The gate surrounding the solar panel farm had been slit open, like someone wanted to perform a cesarean, but only had a rusted pair of clippers at their disposal. The back door of the converter station had been battered in, the air heavy and rebreathed, like the filters weren't working at full efficiency, panels ripped open, wires everywhere, nanobots probably skittered around the room like roaches in my auntie's old kitchen. The farm was strictly a backup source of power for the lunar colony, so it wasn't as heavily guarded as, say, the nuclear fission power station with magnetic generators. But there was still a man down, and Astra Black stood over his body. Dr. Hensley Morgan, a.k.a. Dreamer, Ranking Science Council member. Astra had an elegance about her, like the waltz of a first lady. When she walked, she stepped with purpose, long strides, though only the balls of her feet ever seemed to touch the ground. At first glance, nothing about her stuck out as exceptional. Average height and build, hair drawn back in afro puffs, but she had this way about her. Brother Eric 12X Squared, Commander-in-Chief, Security of the First World, a.k.a. The Fruit. All science police officers wore these ugly gray and black unitard-looking things back then, like we were fresh from a superhero convention or performing in an Earth, Wind, and Fire tribute band. Took forever before the paperwork went through to get them changed, but she made hers look cool. Wore one of those Tuskegee Airmen bomber jackets over it. Wasn't regulation, but with her long black boots, she was a proud officer. Jiminy Kreutz. She wore these dark sunglasses, no matter the time of day. It was only when she removed them that something tugged at me. Her face a mask of fixed resolve, except when she turned to me while everyone studied the scene. She saw me. She had a way of looking at you, as if she drank every detail. Like with a quick glimpse, she knew your past, your present, your dreams, your passions, your fears, and all of it mattered to her. Without judgment, she winked. Then in the next breath, she slipped her sunglasses back on, and her game face was back in place. Lisanne Parrish. Cult of Tupac, High Priest, once rescued from an earlier prepper attack by Astra Black. Astra Black had brought the funk for as long as I could remember. She was straight up blackety black. She could give the kind of look an auntie gave you when you were about to enter a store that made you sit up straight and not want to touch a thing. She handed out no-look whoopings from the front seat. She wasn't just down for the cause. She was the embodiment of the cause. Jiminy Croots. Some folks see us moving to the moon as reparations. All I knew was that we needed a fresh start. It began as a bit of a social experiment. The hood led the way. But it was ours, the dream realized, though it felt like an experiment everyone was waiting to see fail. Now there was a serpent loose in Blacktopia, so she was concerned. Astra had always been protective of Blacktopia. I can still picture her at the scene, bent over to get a closer look at the damaged parts. "I've already called in a local override to keep the scene lit," she said. First on scene was never good enough with her. She once told me that for her playbook, she also had to be one step ahead of everyone else. "Look what we got here, J. Crew." She pointed to the station wall. Someone went through a lot of trouble to get to the station. She knew I hated nicknames. J. Crew was a familiarity I reserved for Astra alone. Lisanne Parrish. He said that? You'd think with a name like Jiminy Croots, he'd long be out of fucks to give about what people called him. Dr. Hensley Morgan. Names were a funny thing. They gave power to the namer, which was why so often here on First World, when we came of age, we chose our own names. In the end, all a body had was their good name. Nora Bradford, Astra's longtime friend. Astra was born Lavinia Watson II, named after her mother. She didn't legally change her name until after her mother passed. It was like she didn't want to disrespect her mama by changing her name in front of her. Astra loved the history and legacy of her name, but she still had to go her own way. Dr. Hensley Morgan. Her partner, Jiminy. Now he was a train wreck. Wore his hair in that classic George Jefferson style, you know, just short of a full-blown Bozo the Clown or something. Until he finally accepted that his hair was never coming back and shaved it off, had a paunch belly, the kind married men got when they had too much home cooking and not enough exercise. Jiminy Croots. Fuck Dreamer. Fake-ass Rasta. Always hated me 'cause I was light-skinned. Brother Eric 12X squared. Whenever he squatted down to examine something, his knees popped like a series of firecrackers went off from his joints. One time, my men took cover 'cause they thought they were under fire. Jiminy Croots. She joked at the scene, talking about, "Easy there, old man. You ain't even 100 yet." That note of concern in her voice, mixed with one part reproach, like you was about to get on the wrong side of Big Mama, and one part ball bustin'. It was weird. I found myself half apologizing to her, promising to take better care of myself, even pointing out that despite my wear and tear, I still looked good. All she whispered was, "Black don't crack," as she turned back to the scene. Her mind spun through its calculations, almost the way Dreamer does when he's connected to the AI, Morpheus. Eyes heavy-lidded, focused on the details, trying to make sense of things. Except things weren't always made to make sense. Morpheus. Artificial Intelligence Operating System of the Mothership. Often derided as the Preppers, the white survivalist offshoot of the Doomsday Party, they formed their own privately funded lunar colony. Each member primarily saw to their own interests, uniting only to attack First World for resources. Nora Bradford. They were afraid that we were taking what was rightfully theirs. what was supposed to always be theirs. They thought that they were losing out on something, that we might have power over them. And you know how folks get when they're scared. They lose their damned minds. They wanted the mothership. Morpheus. The mothership was an orbital disk, a circular station with 1,500 little wheels inside, feared to be some sort of nuclear platform. The mothership remains undetected by radar because it doesn't always exist on this plane of reality. It existed between spaces commonly referred to as tesseract folds. Dr. Hensley Morgan. The mothership wasn't even ours. No one knew its origins, though everyone was quick to take credit for it. I still don't know how Elijah Muhammad first heard tell of it, but to hear him go on, it was built by humans many centuries ago. We communicate with this AI through the masks. That's as close as we get to knowing it. Of course, some people viewed us, as a threat. Lisane Parrish. Fucking preppers. Pardon my French, but damn. Even when we go to the moon, some folks just can't let us be. Yeah, I might still sound a little bitter. Still have some issues to work out. It was just that those damn preppers have a way of bringing everything back up rather than just let us be. Brother Eric 12X squared. We'd got word that the preppers were up to something. Paranoid bunch. All but wore tinfoil hats as their official headgear. They followed us up to the moon not too long after our scientists and survey teams had the foundations in place for mass exodus. They lived in a constant state of fear. Preppers fled from one vague threat or another, H1N1, H5N1, airborne toxic events, radiation fallout, robots, network machines. Something was always out to get them. Reminds me of something my father used to say. No matter how far you run from your problems, there you are. You ask me, they were what they kept accusing us of being, marauders. Opportunists, who instead of making their own plans, hooked themselves onto other people's preparations. They couldn't stand that we were getting on without them. So they kept running up on us. Well, we caught one of the saboteurs. No, let's call them what they were. Terrorists. And we transported him back to headquarters for interrogation. What was that phrase Astra used to always say? Nora Bradford. Run up and get done up, son. Whenever we said that, it meant things were about to go down, for real. Morpheus. To test the viability of First World, the mothership deployed the mother plane to collect a neighborhood. It selected the Hawville section of Indianapolis. Jiminy Croots. That's why Hawville became the unofficial capital of Blacktopia. Plus, it had Long's Donuts. I ain't lying. I'd cross the galaxy for some Longs. Nora Bradford. For any first-gener, it was hard to break the old habit of looking to the sky to hunt for the moon. There was only the dome overhead. The city grew darker, though it wasn't the shadows that were the illusion, but rather the light. The sky was light reflected from the sun and cast against the ceiling, a cold, sterile light, function without nuance. No wind, no warmth, no overcast skies, only endless, cloudless light. The mirrors directing the sunlight slowly shifted, continuing the masquerade of sunlit days. As the day faded into a smoky luminescence, it grew darker and quieter when folks re-entered the city proper. When you walked the streets, no one minded the darkness. Nighttime was personal. Lights from houses, the occasional passing electric buggy. The buildings were 3 and 4 stories high. A series of modules, rows and rows, much like the farms of solar panels that fed into the converter station. Shiny intestines of the city, stout and resolute, Astra was always proud of the city we created. Brother Eric 12X squared. The science police was the security of the First World, though people often called us the Fruit, short for the First Fruits. We were established with the idea of being a medical constabulary, because crime was a disease and the science police were the physicians, so the smarty art folks said. On original Earth, criminals were often rehabilitated through the use of drug collars that dosed them during the course of the day to keep them sedate and out of trouble. Higher level offenders, everyone from excessive debtors to murderers, were simply warehoused in facilities. We wanted to leave the ways of OE behind, do things different. Jiminy Croots. With easy access to free education, with opportunity abounding for all, what few criminals we had usually feared one of two things. 1. Hospitalization, with the endless questions of psychiatrists and the poking by too attentive doctors, who rarely had the opportunity to study an actual criminal up close. Or 2. Us telling their mama what they were up to. No one could bring righteous justice like an upset or ashamed mama, but not everyone liked what we were doing. Nora Bradford. The preppers saw us as something to be feared, an excuse for anger, gave them purpose and meaning through hate, agency through fear. They never knew how much we validated them until we were gone. Then they were out of excuses, so they chased us out here. Randall A. McCarthy. Sergeant at Arms, Patriot, a.k.a. Doomsday Prepper. From transcripts of his interrogation by Astra Black. Randall A. McCarthy, Sergeant at Arms, 900013XAT. Jiminy Croots, name, rank, and serial number. Seriously? That was all he repeated for the first hour of his questioning. Randall A. McCarthy, under the Geneva Convention, that is all you are entitled to. Dr. Hensley Morgan. I don't even know where to begin with all the wrong in that sentence. Jiminy Croots. His teeth gleamed like yellow buildings, each sprang out in their own direction, with the occasional building apparently having been knocked out entirely. His expression, sour and morose, like he'd been forced to eat undercooked chitlins. A full white beard and a hunter's cap drawn low on his head. Eyelids heavy, half asleep. Often saw it in their eyes, a reminder of what they thought about us, like a coat in the back of the closet we forgot was there, a coat that no longer fit, born of oppression and ignorance, baptized in self-hatred, a part of ourselves we had shed. Nora Bradford. We had the opportunity to remake the world, so we created the world we wanted to live in, economic imbalance, political imbalance, fixing deeply entrenched wounds to correct a spiritual imbalance. Of course we expected that once we'd gone in and done the work of colonization, then the government wants to take over, which was why we've petitioned the UN for sovereign status. Brother Eric 12X squared. Back on OE, they'd have marked Astra as one of the special ones, one of those brown people they allowed to shine, with that talent that couldn't be denied, so they pat that special one on the head and let them succeed as if they were doing them a favor. Randall A. McCarthy. What side of the door do you want to be on? Don't call us preppers. We're patriots. Of course we knew what you were up to. This extended vacation of yours where you plot and scheme against us, where you plan our genocide. Here's what I know. This should have been ours. Lassane Parrish. I love how the preppers conveniently re-remember history, like we ain't got nothing better to do than think about them. Nora Bradford. Like somehow we had robbed them of their dream, their birthright. We went to the moon for the same reason Marco Polo traveled to China, for the same reason Columbus sailed the ocean blue, for the same reason Hillary climbed Mount Everest, for the adventure, for history. Man, white tears are the least sustainable form of energy. Dr. Hensley Morgan. Those with means prepared to move off the planet into space. OE had gotten so bad. People tossed around phrases like Venus syndrome and extinction level event, like they were guessing a crossword puzzle. We'd seen how this story ended before. The poor, huddled masses let them develop their wealth on the backs of the poor before they planned to get out. The national debate weaponized ideology, their words as preamble to flicking the switch to exterminate the poor once and for all. But we left. Jiminy Croots. Yes, but not the way they meant it. Blacktopia gave us a reason to change. You know how folks can go to a conference or vacation or something. Back home, they're an upstanding businessman, faithful wife, a deacon at their church, coach their kids' little league. Then they go away. They shed their old selves, maybe slip their wedding ring off in their pocket, not give their real name. become someone else for as long as the trip allowed. That's what Blacktopia is. There's no going back to for us. That has never been a real option for us. This is it. We are here now, and we are who we are. There's no place for us back there. Even if there was, we aren't the same people we were when we left.
Nora Bradford. We were black, human, equal. No longer a nigger or a nigga. I always hated that. Like we were all a part of some subversive club thinking we were more cute than we were. It still took a generation to shed our OE mindsets, to lower our guards and accept ourselves, to raise up a generation who never knew the insanity of color lines and blood politics, laws of exclusion, a differentiation of class by shade, who never experienced the conditioning of poverty or the nihilism of hopelessness. Brother Eric 12X squared.
But in that prepper's eyes, he didn't see any of that. All he saw was us taking what was supposed to be his.
Nora Bradford. When she was in the public school system, back on OE, she did horrible in school. Astra was hood tough, a survivor. The journey did not drive her insane. I had no doubt. We stay sane. We survived the middle passage, the journey, the deprivation, the bondage. We could survive a trip to the moon. She had always been a high-energy kid, ADHD or whatever it was they used to call kids who wouldn't sit their ass down when told. And she had 0 fucks to give. None. She always did her thing and didn't care what people thought. Leastways, that was the way she acted. Defiance as her first impulse. But given a moment to pause, she leads with her heart. She transferred to the Dunbar Academy where she thrived. Not at first. The first year, she did very little. If a teacher, hell, anybody approached her, she shut down. Attention wasn't to be trusted. She eyed everyone with equal suspicion. She ended up having to repeat that education level. That second year, she began to flourish. It was as if she had to detox from her old life, her old mindset, her old way of doing things. Her teachers, familiar with the whole Negro to Black conversion experience, gave her room to do so. By graduation, she was the top of her class.
Randall A. McCarthy. Bullshit. You people ran for the money. There's $1 or 2 to be made in adventure, trade in HE3 from your mining, working with Russian cosmonauts and Chinese takenauts on space-based construction. Charges to use the observatory facilities alone could fund a third world nation, tourism, hydroponics. Lisane Parrish. In Blacktopia, weed is legal and a major export. I, myself, dabble in space crush and gilf weed. Randall A. McCarthy. Don't get me started on your name. If we called our society Whitesville, you'd call us racist. Jiminy Croods. Dude, seriously. Whitestown was just up the road from me on OE. He was just mad there ain't no trees on the moon and it's hard to hang one of us. Here in Blacktopia, I'm sorry, first world if that makes you feel better. I can pull out my phone and make a call rather than worry about being shot.
Randall A. McCarthy.
We just wanted what was ours, and we were going to get it by any means necessary, as you like to say. Everyone struts around with their chest puffed out like they'd done something spectacular. Even those back home started carrying themselves differently.
Nora Bradford. They just don't know how to deal with people who are proud.
Randall A. McCarthy. You're all tough talk and mean postures while you have your mothership to hide behind. We wanted to see just how tough you were without it.
Nora Bradford. Astra also had a melancholy streak. One minute her spirit soared high and swept everyone around her up in its fervor. The next, like she flew into a dark cloud, she grew sullen and withdrawn, depressed because the world doesn't have to be that way. Possibilities were there. To see less, to fall so short, wore her spirit down.
Jiminy Croots. She stopped talking to Lieutenant Commander Nutjob mid-interrogation. She got real quiet and turned away from him. You know the kind of quiet when clouds gather and darken and you know a storm is brewing? All she said was, You'll ruin everything. Why?
We just want to be at peace.
Randall A. McCarthy. What makes you think you deserve peace? What makes you so special? Jiminy Croots.
I don't know why she bothered to spend any time trying to convince him of anything, but that was her way. She always believed that as long as she was dealing with someone old enough to reason, that should be her first recourse. But if there's one thing I've learned, even more so since we've been here, is that you can't reason with hate. Besides, if they got a foothold here, the first thing they'll want to get is their own month.
Dr. Hensley Morgan. The observatory was one of our chief sources of revenue. We worked with governments from around the planet to conduct research. The spirit of Harambe, let's pull together, harnessed the power of selfishness as a way to turn around the crabs in a bucket mentality. What benefits us all benefits the individual. It was similar to how we were governed by the Science Council. No political system per se, simply the brightest minds who had contributed the most rose in the ranks. The more they served, the more they were asked to lead. Jiminy Croots.
I hated it whenever I had to go to the observatory to deal with Dreamer, but we had to lay out the situation for the Science Council. Rows of herbs hung about. Their loamy scent tickled the back of my throat as if there was phlegm I wanted to cough up. Dreamer hobbled about the lab, tut-tutting to himself under his breath as he puttered about thinking. He didn't get high to escape. He got high to expand his consciousness. That's what he told himself. A tangle of dreads bobbed behind another bank of computers. When it rounded the corner, there was Dreamer, wearing that damn mask he uses to communicate with Morpheus, which covered the top half of his face.
Dr. Hensley Morgan. I hate it when he calls me Dreamer. Lisane Parrish. I wasn't one to shit on another person's religion. My family traces its ties in the cult of Tupac back to the prophet himself. We are all dreamers, of the line of George Clinton and Sun Ra and Earth, Wind, and Fire, black cosmonauts in thought and deed. Our prophets were taken from us too soon. Jiminy Croots.
California love plays whenever anyone enters one of their temples.
Dr. Hensley Morgan. The final war between God and the devil is to be fought in the sky. They wanted the mothership. All of this, such a waste. The preppers and their like saw it as an armed, vengeful angel hovering over the moon, the planet. A masterpiece of mechanics and engineering in the wrong hands, the greatest military weapon ever created. So, of course, we'd have nothing better to do with it than threaten white people. A strictly OE way of thinking. Lord have mercy. Nora Bradford. If you're taught to hate and violence, marinated in it for generations, you end up with hate and violence. Lisane Parrish. The mothership? I've never seen it. Jiminy Croots.
That's some fairy tale nonsense they drum out whenever the Science Council is testing out tech they don't want us knowing about. No, I've never seen it.
Brother Eric 12X squared. I've never seen it. I simply believe. Dr. Hensley Morgan. They were planning on taking over the mothership. The attack on the solar farm was only the first step. It wasn't easy to detect, but the preppers installed an electromagnetic hatch as a way to board it. The hatch acted as a gateway into the ship and held open, undetected, as long as the power remained intact. Its battery was the solar grid itself. Our EMF meter could detect the mothership with it. So could theirs. An electromagnetic pulse might cripple it. We didn't know how much time we had. Once Astra laid out the situation, she was ready to go after them herself. A solo operation made sense. I knew that we could get her to the mothership undiscovered. All we had to do was use the dishes at the observatory to convert electricity into an electromagnetic field. We equipped her suit with special magnets with the same polarity. When she jumped, she'd come down, but the fields would catch her. Think of it like a wireless bungee jumper. Nora Bradford. Often when we were together, I'd catch her just looking up at the stars, dreaming. She had the words, "I will breathe," tattooed on her scapula. She called me before she'd left. She had that half-wistful grin on her face. Right before she disconnected, she said, "I don't trust the laws of physics that much." We faced reality head-on. Astra was revolutionary. She dared to dream. She dared to speak. She dared to stand. Because someone had to raise their voice, she said. She was what we wanted our children to grow up and be. She was free. Astra Black, a.k.a. Lavinia Watson II, Science Police, Lieutenant Commander, posthumous recipient of the Key of Life Award for meritorious service to her people. Jumpsuit transmission log. I'm on the mothership. I'm monitoring their chatter. They're having problems getting more than a small squad in. Morpheus has them locked out. Yes. Now I need you to send me the codes to allow them full access. I know. You need to trust me on this. I need as many of them on board as possible. No, I haven't been compromised. I'm tired, Jiminy. I have an idea to deal with them once and for all. But I need my partner's help. No, not J. Crew. Not this time. Your senior investigator, Jiminy Kreutz. I've always respected the name. I live now. In the moment. I am who I am today. Transmit the codes. Dr. Hensley Morgan. Many believe that the white light we're supposed to see at the moment of death was a desperate, dying brain's electric last gasp. Synaptic death, a neural big bang before the final whimper. I don't know. There's a lot we don't know. I'm just not afraid to admit it. There was a white light. No sound, just impossible brightness. Then like a hitched breath, the mothership was gone. The last gasp was her downloading Morpheus into our systems. Brother Eric 12X squared. There's this phenomenon called the Overwatch effect. Astronauts get it. Anyone who's been in space peered long and hard into the infinite nothingness and gained a sense of perspective. To see the Earth, this ball of life, so precarious, bobbing in the blackness. You can't see no boundaries between countries, can't see no religions, can't see no race. Only life. Fragile, fragile life. Nora Bradford. Astra Black never set out to be a hero. But that was the thing about heroes. They were ordinary people who did the right thing in extraordinary circumstances. Sometimes all you need to do to be a hero was just stand up and be counted. Lisanne Parrish. I think I loved her. Jiminy Kreutz.
My father was in his early 40s when President Barack Obama was elected president. Some people didn't understand why people broke down and cried, or why folks danced in the streets. Those people never had to worry about being excluded from a system, or the feeling of being targeted by that same system. Those people never had to live under a government whose constitution saw them as 3/5 human. This was why the thought of a black president was the stuff of fairy tales. Not in my lifetime, he told himself. Not in my lifetime. At night. I still look up at the sky out of habit. A part of me still wanting to look for her. Still feeling watched, even protected by her. She was something many of us never thought we'd see in our lifetimes in light of our many tragic yesterdays. A hope of a better tomorrow.
And that was our story. Maurice has managed to pack a whole lot of social commentary and experience into one short story, which is what the best science fiction does. It's no lie that I love this story because I've now purchased it twice, once for Mothership Zeta, and now once for Escape Pod. Inevitably, someone will probably complain that this was too political, but when people say that, they're usually protesting politics that aren't their own. Everything is political, including leaving a group of people out of a story. For so long, black kids didn't feel like science fiction was for them because they didn't see themselves in science fiction. That's changing every time a black author gets published. If you enjoy this episode and you really want to delve into some Afrofuturism and other stories by black voices, I want to recommend Faya Magazine to you. That's at FIYAHLitMag.com. This is the magazine of black speculative fiction, and if anyone tries to tell you that black SF isn't a thing, because dang, people really like to tell us that black people or any marginalized voice doesn't write the fantastic, then all you need to do is check there and find some of the best voices in science fiction being published. Escape Pod is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated, distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. That long thing means share it, but don't change it and don't charge for it. All other rights are reserved by our authors. We are pro-paying market, meaning we live on your donations. We are also Hugo nominated for the Best Semi-Prozine of 2017. So if you're a voter and you're listening, consider us. You can find us at escapepod.org and see our sister podcasts, Podcastle, Pseudopod, and Cast of Wonders at their .org domains. Our music is by permission of Daikaiju. You can hear more from them at daikaiju.org. So that was our show for this week. And our quote comes from N.K. Jemisin. Home is what you take with you, not what you leave behind. So we'll see you next week with more free speculative fiction. Until then, have fun and be mighty.